Well, good afternoon. Welcome to our first new knowledge session for 2023. It's still going to take me a couple of months to get used to writing that on my checks and documents, but so glad that you could join us today. I hope this is not your first, but if it is, welcome. This is a program that's been going on for almost 10 years now. We started as a support program to help with the Washington County Business Challenge, which the 10th annual of that is coming up. Actually, tomorrow is the deadline to apply for that. But this is something that we did to support this program to continue training and helping our entrepreneurs and small business owners in Washington County grow. And now it's become a statewide program for the new knowledge, I should say, that we've been doing it online. And we have these videos, and probably we have, I would say, anywhere around 170 workshops that we have done over the years. My name is Sandy Ratliff. I'm with Virginia Community Capital, and I partner with the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, and the town of Abington to do these workshops every other week. Today's session is being recorded for training and educational purposes. And before we get started and to keep the webinar flowing, we do have everyone muted. However, we want you to learn from this and be able to ask questions from our speakers. So if you have a question before, during, and after the session, please put those in the Q&A section, and we will address those moving forward. We are very fortunate to have a friend of mine, Gary McGeough, with the Bristol Chamber of Commerce with us today to lead this session. Gary's experience in starting and operating and selling businesses is a valuable asset to us and to our team. He has many years of helping entrepreneurs develop the skills of launching and growing and operating businesses, and we're just blessed to have him. So Gary has certainly been a friend to Southwest Virginia and to our new knowledge program over the last 10 years. So Gary, thank you for leading this session, and I am going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sandy. I just want to underscore what Sandy has said about this program for so many years. I've been connected with entrepreneurs and small businesses and nonprofits for the last 20 years. I started out with the Chamber of Commerce at SCORE. I was with SCORE for about 10 years, and then SCORE folded in Bristol due to some circumstances. I continued on the program through the Bristol Chamber of Commerce. We've been doing these sessions for a long time, and so so I appreciate the opportunity. I really appreciate the things that Southwest Virginia is doing to support small businesses and entrepreneurs. Over the last several years, I have been truly surprised by the number of businesses and how strong they are, and some of the types of businesses that I never would have considered being successful that absolutely are. So it's this Lunch and Learn program. Like Sandy says, there's dozens and dozens of these things recorded on their YouTube channel. And they address nearly every subject. Not all are nonprofit oriented, but a good deal of them are, or can be if you're sitting here with a nonprofit hat on. All right. So anyway, let me get started. I'll move on to the next slide here. For those of you who are interested in getting some assistance, this is the Small Business Development Centers located in Southwest Virginia, their phone numbers and stuff. I'll be happy to share this presentation with anybody who wants it. We do some other things as well in terms of strategic plans and SWOT analysis and detail analysis of some organizations and methods to go forward. So if anybody's interested in that, they can certainly contact me offline for that. We're going to just talk about business plans and the elements of a plan. We're going to talk about strategies, and I'm going to go through some of this stuff pretty fast. There's a lot of material to cover. This truly is going to be an information overload. I'm going to relay a lot of information. If you catch some of the highlights and then you want to get into the details later, just let me know, contact me, email me, or phone me. I'm available all the time. There's a lot of material here, and when someone is developing a program summary or a business plan or a financial forecast, it seems like it's overwhelming. But you know what they say, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And so all these things, they may seem overwhelming, but they're not. And they may seem difficult for you, but they're not. It's just a lot of it. So just be aware of that as we go forward. Give you a little history about my business background. I used to own and operate a room maker wall beds for about 10 years in California. You see a photo of a wall bed. And then you see the storefront that I was in. I was in the one next to the little van there at the end of the facility. It was an interesting 10 years. I'll tell you that the business plan truly helps you when you're trying to understand what it is you have to do. My thought was, when I was doing this, I was going to buy the bed mechanism, I was going to buy the mattresses, and I was going to buy the cabinets from one company. How hard could that be? And I was going to be a distributor. And it was only after I got into business a couple of months when I realized I wasn't really selling beds, I was selling cabinets. Every single order that I had, it was $6,000. There was only $1,000 was the bed, and the other $5,000 were cabinets. And so this is one of those things like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to figure out what I'm doing here. So I had to do my homework fast. So anyway, so when I'm talking about my business, this is the kind of thing I was talking about. The rewards for starting your own business is, of course, potential of financial security. It's certainly independence. It's certainly satisfaction. If you start your business and you're able to keep it going, you certainly get a lot of self-satisfaction out of that. And there's a distinction between starting a business or creating a job. You know, if you're going to start a lawn business, you're essentially starting a job for yourself as opposed to a corporation or something like that. But nonetheless, it's you're going to feed your family with that. The bad news is not all small businesses succeed. We can argue and we can discuss the percentages here. But about 79% of small businesses survive the first year. 21% of businesses fail in the first year, 50% over 5 years, 70% over 10 years. I felt I was successful, and I was in it for 10 years, and I finally got out of it. So it just goes to show you. And 82% of the business failed for the cited cash flow as the problem. And 33% of the business's owners said the greatest challenge was the lack of capital. Well, those last two things, cash and lack of capital, are a result of what? They're a result of, I don't have enough business. Otherwise, I wouldn't have those problems. So just be aware of those things. You know, again, we can argue about the percentages up or down 4 or 5 or 6%, but they're still pretty high. And why do businesses fail? I'm going to go through some of this stuff pretty quickly. Some of this, you know, is common sense, but some of it may not be. Why do businesses fail? The inexperience. I mean, you're starting something that you don't necessarily know anything about, and the ability to manage, making decisions and problem solving. If you talk to any small business owner, they're making decisions and they're solving problems on a regular basis all the time. Every single day, the phone rings, somebody's complaining about something, or somebody wants you to solve their problem. So if you're not good at that, this may not be your optimal choice. And the lack of commitment, endurance, dedication, and desire. You have to your business, for you to stay in business, has to take an awful high priority. And sometimes your family fails and you don't get to see your kids, or you're working 7 days a week. And what happened? Yeah, we don't see you at church anymore. You know, it's you got to do what you got to do to keep the business running. So it's important that business owners understand that. It's also important that you got to be self-sufficient. And I mean truly self-sufficient. You got to be a leader, a planner, a negotiator. You got to be able to solve problems. You got to be a futurist. You got to be a software technician. You got to be a computer hardware guy. You got to be much, much more. Now, do you have to know all those things? No, you don't. But if you don't know those things, or you don't attempt to know them, you're going to pay somebody to do that. And when you're starting out a business, paying everybody to do everything isn't necessarily the wise choice if you don't have the money to do it. So just keep that in mind, that self-sufficiency is the key to minimizing your costs and your expenses. All right, what's a business plan and why do we need it? It's going to be a roadmap, and we'll get into that. But you should also understand that no one is going to be as passionate about your business as you are. I mean, when I was selling wall beds, I just felt like everybody in the world needed to have one of those things. And I still believe that, actually, but they're so convenient. In fact, I'm sitting in front of one of them right now where I have a queen size bed in my office and the bed's out of the way and I have a full blown office in here. So it's totally great as far as I'm concerned, but nobody's going to be as passionate about it as you are. All right, we're going to determine the business plan is a means of determining the feasibility of the business, whether or not it makes sense. You act as a working plan for operations. How's this really going to work? To obtain capital to start and sustain the business, you're going to have to explain your business to a banker. So I want to borrow this money so I can start my business. And they're not going to want to say, well, let's sit across the desk and have a cup of coffee and then I'll make a decision. That's not how it works. A business plan has to be well thought out so that the people you're borrowing money from have a full understanding of what you're doing. And it's also a guide to a successful outcome. So almost every nonprofit should have a business plan, and every business should have a business plan. And it's an ongoing thing. It's a living document, so it'll change. And the business plan is a description of just how you are going to operate. How is the business going to run? What am I going to sell? Who's going to sell it? Where am I going to get it from? Why am I doing this? What hole in the economy will I be filling, or what service will I be providing that's not currently being provided, or how can I do it better? You're going to address the strengths and weaknesses of your company and the strengths and weaknesses of your competition. And in my business, when I had my business, understanding the competition, I won't say got me more business than I would have if I didn't have a full understanding, but I got a lot of business because I had a quality product and my competitors did not. And I was able to convey that to potential customers. So strengths and weaknesses are pretty important. Also the business plan is going to help you sort out what resources do I need? Do I need to buy new stuff, or can I buy used stuff? Can I get by without this for a little while until I get a little money? So, and what kind of financial performance are you expected? And we'll walk through a estimated profit and loss a little later on in this presentation, but we'll walk you through that, and just keep in mind this time phased spreadsheet that's going to help you determine whether you're going to make money, A, and B, are you going to make enough to make this all worthwhile? Okay. Certainly businesses will make money, but the question is are you going to make enough to support the lifestyle or the family or the income that you hope you're going to do? Okay. There's different types of legal statuses. There's a sole proprietor, partnerships, corporations, and there's different types of each of those. And that's not something you have to sort out right away. You can start out as a sole proprietor and then change at any given time. The IRS lets you change. It doesn't, until you get into a C Corp, it really doesn't change much about how you do your income tax either, whether it's a sole proprietor or a partnership, LLC, S Corp. there's not much difference. It's pretty much you do it on your personal income tax. You just add a couple more forms is all there is to it. I will point out, and I'm going to emphasize this about partnership. You really need, if you're in a partnership, you really need a partnership agreement. This is kind of funny. It's kind of lighthearted. This just came up the other day, but just to give you an idea why you need a partnership agreement, Florida business partners die after shooting each other. Now, this may be an extreme, and I agree with that, but it just goes to show you that stuff happens. And what, up to 70% of partnerships fail. And again, we can argue the percentage, but a high percentage fail. A partnership should be looked at sort of like a marriage. I mean, you are on the business side, you're marrying a partner or partners that you got to rely on. And there's positive reasons why partnerships break up, and there's negative reasons. Okay. There's also, getting into partnerships with family or friends. A successful partnership should be based on strengths and talents and personalities and experience. And you need those things. You don't just need a buddy. You need to bring in experience. So if you're going to partner with somebody, you got to make sure that they're bringing something to the table. And a partnership agreement documents who's doing what. If somebody's in charge of the purchasing and somebody's in charge of the accounting, you don't want the purchasing guy doing the accounting. You want the purchasing guy doing the purchasing. And so your partnership agreement outlines how is this going to work and how are we going to share the responsibilities. Each person's going to have a defined part of the business. And of course, the reasons for failure are unequal commitment. Some people are more dedicated than others. I'm not willing to work Saturdays. And if you want to work, you go ahead and work Saturdays or Sundays. I'm not willing to do that. Well, lack of success is a reason for failure. Differing values, what you think is important versus your partner. Always personnel clashes. So it's important to develop a partnership agreement. And any of you who are involved in it, I have samples of partnership agreements I can send you. It's not rocket science, but it does have to explain who's responsible for what. And it also has to explain, an exit strategy, that if something happens, how are we gonna distribute the investment or the products or whatever. So a partnership agreement also is the operational guidelines. And so it's very important. It's sort of like a prenuptial agreement. Let's get this sorted out before we have a problem. All right. The business plan describes those people that are involved, brief resumes, what qualifies you, what other key people do you have? If you've got a salesperson or a manufacturer or something, you may be purchasing products from a manufacturer. In my case, I was purchasing the products from a well-known big manufacturer in Minneapolis. So part of my strength on my business plan, part of my strength was I had a whole team of manufacturing people to help me. So that they became part of my cadre of assistants. Even though they were, 1,000 miles away. The relevance of your experience, other qualifications that you have, organization structure, job descriptions. When I'm interviewing people or when someone calls and asks, I'm thinking of starting a business, just pick something, wallpaper or lawn service or handicrafts, just, pick one. But we never have to talk to them about how to cut the lawn or how to trim the hedges. What we got to talk to them about is your accounting system and your marketing and your invoicing and your collection of debt and your maintenance and some of the other things that you may know how to cut the lawn, but do you know how to use QuickBooks? And, do you know how to do income tax? And, you know how to set all that up. And so it's never the job. It's always the back office things that we have to remind everybody that are just as important. Okay. You're going to have to identify who your target customer is and what do they want? What do they expect? Where are they? How do I intend to reach these people? And the same thing holds true for nonprofits. If you're coming up with a new program, you want to expand a program, who are you going to target this? Who's going to benefit and what are they going to expect from you, or what are you going to offer for them? And so all this stuff applies to both, and who's your competition? Is somebody else out there doing what you're doing? And if so, what makes you different? Are you better? Are you faster? Are you cheaper? Your quality's higher? Your maintenance is better. Your customer service is better. Whatever it is, you're going to have to sort through all that. Okay. The business plan itself is a written document, and again, it's a living document. It talks about your objectives and your strategies and the business environment itself. I can recall when I started my business, I was living in San Diego. I did this, and I came up with the idea. I said, "Boy, I'm trying to get one of these beds to go up and down. I'll be darned if I can find one of those things." So I started scoping it all out, and I talked to my wife about it, and I said, I'm going to do some research on this, and this is how this is going to work. And so then I developed the business plan, and I said, well, honey, you're going to have to read through this thing. I'd like you to have an understanding of all this. And so she sat down, and she read through it for a couple of hours, and she said, wait, this isn't what we talked about. And she was right. And the reason it wasn't what we talked about is I was shooting from the hip on this is what I think I want to do. But when you get down to it and you start writing a business plan and you start thinking about the details, no, it's not going to operate exactly how I thought it would. We're going to have to do something different. Certain things I didn't think about, or certain things when I did think about them, I had to change my perspective because they just wouldn't be able to operate that way. And so the idea of the business plan is to get your thought process to the level that you're thinking about the details of this business and not just shooting from the hip. You're at a point now where if you're going to start borrowing money or you're going to start consuming money, be it your own or partners or whatever, you want to make sure you're not wasting it doing something that you said, whoops, I shouldn't have done that. So that's what the business plan is supposed to be doing. It's a means of communicating what you want to do to your partners. Make sure, sometimes, just like I said, I told my wife every night when I came home, I talked about what I had researched and all this stuff. And then when I wrote the business plan, she looked at it and says, whoa, this doesn't sound like what we talked about. And so sometimes your partners, you have a little different objectives. Your employees and your investors, the bank, they all want to know what it is you're doing. And also it's a guide for projecting your performance and measuring your performance and managing how you're going to perform against that. So it's a living document. It targets, who's your target group? What size are they? Where are they? How far are you willing to go? Like in my case, I was in San Diego. I used to go to Palm Springs. Lord, it was a 3-hour drive. Do you want to go that far? How are you going to reach them? You got to know about your competition. Who else is doing this and how are they doing? Have they been successful? How long they've been around? How much money are they making? And what makes you different? It's the target group and the size of the group. How are you going to reach them? We'll talk a little bit about the marketing in just a few minutes here. All right, there we go. This is just a kind of a ballpark. If you're going to develop a business plan, these are some of the steps these are some of the research things that you need to go through. Writing the business plan and writing a marketing plan and develop it into a full business plan, and you got to look around for some funding. How's this going to work? So it's just kind of a timeline to give you an idea. A business plan that I used to have this in my presentation, but I took it out because the Small Business Administration keeps records of all kinds of stuff. And so do some of the small business development centers that I cited earlier. The more time you spend planning your project, be it a nonprofit program or your business or how this is going to, the more time you spend planning that thing, the more successful you're going to be. You're going to, if you spend a long time and a lot of detailed information, a lot of research, a lot of different properties and square footages and equipment and whatever else you're going to do, the more time you spend doing that, the more understanding you're going to have. And we'll get to the spreadsheet financial projection, but the more research you do in the business plan, it's going to help you project what your income is going to be later on. And I'll show you that. All right, this is typically a business plan. This is the outline of a business plan. Now, this is I like to say a business plan is like chapters of a book. Each one of these subjects here, executive summary and the business description and products and management, are like chapters of a book. If you go into a library, they're going to have 50 different books on business plans. They're all going to tell you the same thing. They're written differently. Some are marketing oriented, some are manufacturing oriented, some are service oriented, but they basically, this is the common denominator in the business world for coming up with all the aspects of a business. This is basically how it's done. And you can put a spin on it one way or the other, but this is basically the outline here, okay? So we'll walk through that stuff. The executive summary typically is 2 or 3 pages. That is in the front. That's like the preface of a book. It's this is what I'm doing. I'm going to give you a thumbnail overview. You interested or not? If you're interested, then you turn the page and you go on to the details and you read through the rest of the business plan. So and it's normally done last because you really need to do all of your homework and all your studying, all your research, all the things that you're going to use to build the business plan are the same things that you're going to use to write your executive summary. To get it right, you gotta do the research, and like I said, it's the last thing that you'll want to do for your business plan after you've already completed the research items. The business description, it's just that. What is the business? What type of business is it? What's the reason for starting it? Other than, I want to make some money, but is there a reason? Or is there nobody else in town doing this? What business are you in, and what does it stand for? Describe the business and what's your vision for your business? What need in the community or need in the industry will you fill? Are you going to solve some sort of problem? What are your success factors? Those are all the things that are going to be in your business summary. What are your goals and objectives and milestones or schedules or some other type of thing that you can monitor how you're coming along. In terms of the products and services, what do you sell? Like I said, I thought I was selling beds. It turns out I was selling cabinets that also had a bed. You talk about a turnaround. If you're in a service, what service do you deliver? Accounting or maintenance or janitorial or lawn services or cleaning or whatever. Describe what it is you do. And then the pricing strategy, how are your products and services priced? What methods will be used to determine the price? Will you employ discounted pricing? What are the margins that you work from? I can tell you in my experience, pricing was the hardest thing for me to do. It was very, very hard. I was dealing with some high-end things, And my average sale was $6,000 or $7,000, and not everybody wants to spend that much money. And so it's important that you, and also when I'll talk to you later about this, but when we do the spreadsheet and the estimated profit and loss, you're gonna get an attitude adjustment when you start thinking about pricing, and I'll walk you through that. Management and operations. This is a simple organization chart, and it doesn't matter what business you're in. It doesn't matter if you're a for-profit or a nonprofit. What's important to understand about this, and let's just take, for example, let's take a house painter. Okay. So the owner he's got a ladder and he's got a paintbrush and a bucket and he's out there painting houses. Okay. Well, who's doing the accounting? And who's doing the procurement of the paint and the ladders? And who's out there talking to the customer, figuring out how many square feet it is and what color you want and what color shutters and what color this and how's this going to work? And then there's the operations, who's actually going to do that. When you're talking to the guy who's the painter, you say, do you know how to do the accounting? Do you know how to use QuickBooks? You know how to do the invoicing? If the answer is no, then I say, well, somebody's going to have to do that. So you're either going to hire an accounting firm or you're going to do it yourself on your own computer. But you have to recognize that these are jobs. And the purchasing is a job and sales is a job. And oh, by the way, sales, if you're a house painter and you're busy painting a house, it takes you 2 weeks or 3 weeks to paint a house. When you're done with that house, where do you go next? And if you don't have a job lined up already to go next, then you're into the sales. And so now you're going from one job and there may be 2 or 3 weeks before you get the next job. So that's 2 or 3 weeks of pay that you have lost because no one is doing the sales and getting you set up for the next job. So when you get done on Monday, you can go back to work on Tuesday. So business owners have to recognize that these are real jobs. Now, you don't have to hire that out to someone. You can do that yourself. But my point is you have to allocate time in your weekly schedule for each of these things that you just admitted are actual jobs. And if you don't know how to do some of these things, it would be in your interest to learn how to do them before you open your business, like accounting, for example. Okay. It's good to have your accounting set up and your accounts, your charter and all that stuff set up. It's good to have all that stuff before you go into business so that you're not hiccuping. So just understand that if you believe these are real jobs, then you need to allocate time for those things. It's important to, the last thing you're going to do is take a shoebox full of receipts into an accountant and you're going to say, hey, would you sort this out? They're going to kick your butt right out of the door and say, no, that ain't how we do it here. It takes too much time and you can't afford it for me to sort through that. So all these things are important and the business owners need to recognize it. The other thing you need to set up is your management team. Who are your key managers? Like I said, in my case, I was basically it was a mom and pop store, but some of my key managers were at my manufacturer, the engineering people back there, the marketing people. I relied on them for brochures and sales things and advertisements I put in the paper. I would ask them, do you have the artwork and do you have all this stuff that I can modify? So part of my team was not only myself and my wife, but it was also my insurance guy and my banker and my attorney and all those guys. The other thing you can do is you can set up a board of advisors. These are a bunch of friends of yours or people at the Chamber of Commerce or people, that are in the business and, to set up and meet once a month and say, here's what I'm doing, guys, can you help me out? There's all kinds of, there's lunch and learn things. There's all kinds of these business lunches or business breakfasts. You get to know people and you ask them for their expertise. Now, again, there's professional organizations as well. What qualifies the owner to do this? Do you have work experience? Do you have administrative experience or outside partnerships? Do you have people that you can bring in? When I started my business, I had 20 years of corporate experience in administration and engineering and stuff like that. When I got into my business, man, I had to learn all kinds of stuff all over again. Just because you're in a corporation doesn't mean you know how to use QuickBooks, or you know how to write a purchase order, or you know how to negotiate price. So there's a lot to it, and so your work experience is important. And then if you're doing restaurants, you're doing something or like painting houses, and you need a helper, what does that person need to know? Kind of experience. And then the other thing is the accounting systems. So that's critical. And trust me, you are going to want to do this electronically. You do not want to do this manually. It takes way too much time. And with today's electronic accounting systems, they just make it so easy for you. Market analysis and strategy. Which markets will you serve? How are your business, or who are your business competitors? How does the product differ? What message do you deliver, and how do you deliver it? How are you going to tell people you're out there? And now just think, almost every business plan that I have written, that I have read and evaluated, almost every one says, I'm going to use social media. My means of marketing is going to be social media. It's free. I can do it whenever I want to. I can reach everybody I need to reach. And so as I'm speaking to you, this group of people that are on this workshop, how many of those business advertisements do you get on your Facebook or on your Twitter or on your whatever? Probably not very many. That just means that when I'm reading a business plan and they say I'm going to do social media, I say you're going to have to prove it to me, because so far I don't get a whole lot of these business advertisements on my Facebook or on my Twitter or any of that. I don't get those. So if they say they're going to do them, where are they sending them? So my point is, you just can't use motherhood and say, I'm going to do social media, because nobody does it. And so if you're not doing it, then how are you advertising? What's making that happen? You're going to want to create a word of mouth. You may want to join the Chamber of Commerce. Different chambers of commerce have different things that you can participate in. You can help get the word of mouth out. You can talk to people at luncheons and grand openings and ribbon cuttings and First Friday breakfasts. You can do all that stuff, and that's free. What type of media are you going to use to advertise? How are you going to tell people you're out there? Do you know how much it costs to advertise in the Bristol Herald Courier or the electronic version, or do a TV commercial? You need to know that. You may not use it, but you need to understand how much it is in case you ever do. What types of publicity will you be using? Do you need a sales force? Sales promotions. How are you going to do that? Are you going to do brochures? Let's talk about the marketing. You know what? I'm going to do my own brochures. I'm not going to pay somebody to print 1,000 brochures when I only need 500. Or I only need a few. So if you don't know how to use a graphics program, remember we talked about you should know how to use accounting. Well, you should know how to use graphics too. You should know how to edit pictures and maybe you're going to do a web page. So if you're going to pay somebody to do accounting, and you're going to pay somebody to do your social media, and you're going to pay somebody to prepare your brochures, where's all your money going? Okay. When I talked about self-sustainability, these are some of the things, like a web page. When you develop a web page, you call a web designer and he says, yeah, I'm going to help you. You just give me all the information, I'll put it on the web. Well, you're going to be doing all the writing, all the research. You're going to give them the pictures. You're going to give them the text. and they're going to just post it. And so that's what you're going to be paying for. And you're doing all the work. All they're doing is posting it. So maybe what you ought to do is learn how to do a web page. The stuff they have out there nowadays is so easy, it's hard to believe. And you can save yourself a lot of money and a lot of time by doing it yourself. And if you have changes, boy, you can put it in there and you can press post and it'll change your web page in 5 minutes. And so it's very flexible. So again, self-sustainability. And then location, when you're looking at a business, looking at a location, you got to have 2 or 3 or 4 different locations that you're looking at. And you got to have justification for why it needs to be where. Now, I showed you early, the second or third slide was the plaza that I had my business in. Well, that wasn't a plaza. It happened to be the front row of a business complex that was full of those buildings that have the office in the front and the warehouse in the back, and they're all connected down the line. Well, I happened to find this place that was on the front row. So it was on a main street. So to me, it was like a plaza, but the cost was not like a plaza. The cost was only about half of what a plaza would be. So I saved a lot of money. To everybody who drove by, it looked like a plaza. But because of the pricing, it was an industrial complex and it was way cheaper. So that location had a lot of pluses that other locations didn't. So you got to, like they say in real estate, location, location, location. There's pros and cons to everything. Competition, we talked about who is your competition? Are they direct competitors or are they sort of indirect competitors? Do they do the same thing or something similar? How is their business? Is it steady? Is it increasing? How long they've been around? What have you learned from them? Understanding their product, what they do is very important. So just keep in mind that understanding the competition makes a big difference. And then here's a little matrix of competitor A, B, C, and D, and what size are they? It's just a means of documenting who your competitors are. Location, again, I said location is critical. How much space do you need? How much is the lease? Do you have to pay for the leasehold improvements, or does the landlord pay for the leasehold improvements? Building walls and installing kitchens and exhaust fans and changing the electrical. Who's gonna pay for that, and how does it best serve you? In my case, all I had to do was build a couple of walls to separate some rooms, so I did that myself. Sometimes you can have the landlord do it, and he just increases your lease amount so that you pay for it over the cost of your lease. Sometimes you pay for it up front and you don't have to do that. So it depends on your financing and all that. But location is critical. Okay, financial projections and estimated profit and loss. This is where I was talking about. This is a little hard to see here, but what we have here is a monthly projection. Typically, the revenue is at the top, and then the expenses are down below, and they're down in the lower right-hand corner. You don't see the whole page there, but down in the lower right-hand corner is a summation of all the income and all the expenses tallied up to one number at the end of the year. So depending upon why you're starting this business or why you're doing this endeavor, that is the number down there that you have to be satisfied with. If you did your projections correctly, for example, in my own personal experiences, if somebody who's starting a business to earn some money, if you're not making 50 or 60,000 a year, then you shouldn't be doing it. There's too much involved. And if that number down in the lower right-hand corner doesn't come to 50,000, then maybe McDonald's is where you need to be, where there's no worries, there's no insurance, there's no lawyers, there's no nothing. You just get up, you clock in, you flip the burgers, you go home. It doesn't have to be McDonald's, but you get my point. Is that number down there has to be satisfactory, and if it's not, you're going to go to an awful lot of trouble to find out that it's not. Now, up at the top where it says revenue, you need to list all of the things that you're going to sell. Take a sandwich shop. You're going to say, my average sandwich is going to be $6. And how many sandwiches do I have to sell every week, every month to meet that number down there in the lower right-hand corner? And I know what my expenses are going to be. I can estimate what those are. I can find out what the lease charges are. I can find out what the utility charges. I can call BTES and they'll tell me what the utility costs are. I know what my insurance is going to be. I know what my cell phone and my internet's going to cost. So you can project all that stuff monthly. And some of these things are going to be startup costs, and so in this case, January, February, and March may be higher than April, May, and June because you had to pay for things up front. But my point is the more detail that you can, so you scope this whole thing out and you put how many $6 sandwiches you're going to sell, and you look at the bottom right-hand corner and you say, "Ooh, that's not enough." So I either got to sell more sandwiches, I got to raise the price of the sandwiches, or I got to cut expenses in order to get to that number on the lower right-hand side. Now, I can tell you from experience that you don't have this business, you haven't operated it, you really don't know. You're making certain assumptions, but the more detail you are with this thing, the closer you're going to be, and you would be surprised that you're going to be able to tell by just doing this sheet and doing all the research you're doing for a business plan. You're going to be surprised how close you're going to come to this and whether you're going to go forward with this business or not. Okay. That you're going to be able to tell by this sheet alone. And it hasn't cost you anything. You've done all the research you're going to do. You don't have to pay somebody to do it. You do it yourself, and you can make a determination if this is the right venture for you. Now, all of the things that we have talked about so far are for any venture. Just keep that in mind. So it doesn't matter whether you're a lawn service or a house painter or an engineer. This is the program that you're going to use. This is the standard method of doing things. And so after you do your pro forma income and expense, and it turns out, whoops, this isn't the right thing, and you're thinking, well, I had another idea. Well, do the same process for the other idea. The process is the same. The numbers will change, but the format, the business plan, the chapters of the book, the financial forecast, the location, the competitors, all that stuff, that format is the same format. So, you may, and oh, by the way, when you're doing this pro forma profit and loss statement, you may have 2 or 3 assumptions. If I go into location 1, it's going to cost me this. If I go into location 3, it'll cost me this. If I get aggressive and I want 3 employees versus 1 employee, so you're going to have, or you could have 3 or 4 different pro forma profit and loss statements that have different assumptions in them. And that's also going to help you make up your mind as to what location or how many people or how many products. So it's important. And also, I remember talking to a guy years ago that he came in and he wanted to start a auto repair business. And I said, okay, great. I said, now what can you do? Oh, I can do brakes and I can change engines. I can do paint. I can do body work. I can do the tires. And I said, whoa. Unless you're Bill Gatton, you're not going to do all those things. You don't have the money. You don't have the workshop. So you're going to have to figure out what, at first at least, what can I spend the least amount of time doing, making the most amount of money? Is it brake jobs? Fine. Then let's focus on brake jobs until you get established. And then we take on product number 2 or product number 3. And then eventually you'll get to a full-blown dealership. But you got to pick the things that you're good at and that you're going to make the most money so that you can keep the business running. You don't want to spend all your time with things that don't generate income. So that's important. Okay. So then the strategies and tactics, SWOT analysis. For those of you that don't know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That may sound like buzzwords to you, but it's not. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? It's important. You watch football games every week and they talk about how good the quarterback is. And they say, well, the defensive line isn't that good. Well, that's a weakness. So you got to know what your weakness is so you can change it from a weakness to a strength. And so going through these things, and nonprofits do it all the time when they're doing their strategic plans. And oh, by the way, I can help you with strategic plans and SWOT analysis too. But it's important that you do a SWOT on yourself, on your own company. What competitive advantage do you have, and how do I relay that? How do I capitalize on that stuff? How do I tell people that I'm different? In my case with the wall beds, the only other company that did it was Murphy Bed back then. And their technology was 100 years old and not nearly as substantial as mine. They were the Volkswagen and I was the Cadillac. I mean, it was just simple as that. And so part of my sales pitch was, did you go look at their stuff? Did you go ask them questions? Because if you didn't, you need to in order to do your own marketing for before you make a purchase. And I used to have that discussion all the time when I went to home shows. It was very interesting. Continually improving. Remember, I said we're going to start out doing the brake jobs, and then we'll move on to the next. We'll keep expanding our product line or our service line. This is kind of the thing you have to do. What are your strategies? What am I going to start out with, and how am I going to grow the business? What things can I readily get done? So I can check off the box. You want to be able to do products or do services or do advertising or marketing. You want to be able to check the box off and say, I've done that. I can move on to the next thing. So you want to do achievable things and not be too ambitious. That's going to take up too much of your time. You're going to be busy trying to run a business. The other thing is measuring and quantifying your progress. How are you doing against your pro forma profit and loss projections? You said you were going to sell 20 sandwiches a day. Are you doing that? You got to monitor that stuff, and so you can keep. And that's the other beauty of electronic accounting is you can ask for a profit. You got to just push a button and say, "Give me a profit and loss," and it'll tell you where you are, how much money you've made, and you don't really need to be an accountant to understand that. When you see something that you just see an expense line that all of a sudden it's 10 times what you thought it was, you go, whoa, what the heck is that? And then you go back and analyze it. Are those mistakes that we made or what? And then this is just say what and when in terms of your strategy. When am I going to develop my web page? Well, first I got to learn how to do it. Then I got to get all my data together, and then I got to contract with a web host, and then I got to post it. How many telephone calls am I going to make trying to sell my product? How long is it going to take me to do my first 100,000? When am I going to make my break even? So it's by coming up with these strategies and guesstimates, it's going to help you. All right, some of the keys to success. I cannot emphasize self-sufficiency. You got to be able to do your own accounting. You got to be able to do your own web page. You got to learn how to use Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. If you don't already know how to do that stuff, it's important because if you don't know how to do it, it still needs to get done, and you're going to pay someone to do it. So self-sufficiency is the key to any small business. Selecting the best location, keeping the costs low. When I started my business, I was fixed on keeping the costs low. And I did a fairly good job, but there were some things that I should have purchased and I didn't. And it made my life a lot harder. I made errors because I didn't have the right equipment. I had to have callbacks. And so sometimes it's do I need it? No, but it'll make my life a whole lot easier. So So keeping costs low is a relative thing. The speed of your service, how quickly can you get out there, the uniqueness of what you do. Employee training is critical. If you talk to any small business owner, employees are your biggest hassle. And now we're getting to these new millennium people and XYZ. Their work ethic isn't what it may have been 20 years ago, and so you got to keep all that in mind. Negotiating favorable partnerships. I learned when I had my business, everybody I dealt with, everything was negotiable. Everything. When I was buying stuff, when I was selling stuff, people were negotiating with me. Hey, Gary, what can I do to get the price of this from 5,000 to 4,000? How can we do this? So just understand that when you're in business, everything is negotiable. Okay. And how do you get your market visibility? Everywhere you go, you see Coca-Cola. Why is that? Because they spend the heck out of advertising. And so, over and over and over again is the way you get your name known out there. So, all right. So, whoops. All right. One other thing for those who are starting a small business, the other thing is the Small Business Administration has a website that has some really good information. And I've tried to highlight it here. The website's across the top, and they have several boxes. As you can see, they have several different boxes. The Plan Your Business is the box I picked because this is what we're doing now. But it gives you some pretty good information. You can Google almost anything you want. But this SBA and some of the business related things are pretty good about this. So if you're going to be starting a business, you might visit this site and just kind of cruise through there. There's all different types of information. This is some other information. We in this area are fortunate that there is tons of people, tons of organizations around that will help you at no cost for free. Just call them up and say, I want to come visit. This is what I'm doing. Can you help me? And this is a list of some of them. Okay. There's more. There's even more than that. So, but when somebody calls me and says, I'm going to start a business, I turn them on to Sandy Ratliff. I turn them on to Kathy Lowe. I turn them on to the Lunch and Learn webinars. There's 2 or 3 years, 20 years of stuff that they have posted. All these, quick, like for example, we were talking about QuickBooks. Well, you can go to the Lunch and Learn YouTube channel, and there's QuickBooks 1, QuickBooks 2, and I think there's QuickBooks 3, but I may be wrong. But they're going to show you how to set this thing up. There's when you go to the YouTube channel, you can go web design, and they're going to show you how to set up a web. So it's all this assistance is available. And I told you earlier, this is an information overload. And I told you that how do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. And these are the bites we're talking about. The accounting. Well, you're going to have to learn that. Is it hard? No, but it's just another thing on the list that you have to do. You're going to have to do brochures. Well, if you don't know how to do a brochure, if you don't know how to do graphics, then how are you going to do the brochure? So you got to learn graphics before you can do the brochure. And you can do all those for free, and you can print them out on your own printer. And if you're going to a Chamber of Commerce event and you only need 10 brochures, then you just print out 10. So self-sufficiency. And that, folks, that's all, folks. There's my name, phone number, and email. I'll be happy to share this with anybody. If you need some guidance on helping to put together a business plan, or if you want me to review what you have and critique it, I'll be happy to do that. If you're in the nonprofit arena and you want to do a SWOT or a strategic plan, trust me, it's almost always better to have someone from the outside come in and monitor those things and walk the organizations through it. It's almost always better because somebody from the outside can ask questions and make statements that people from the inside are either afraid to or shouldn't because of relationships. So it's always good to have somebody from the outside. On that, Sandy, take it away.
Thanks so much, Gary. We do have a couple questions. One, Melissa Roberts wants to know, do you think a SOAR analysis are a better option for new businesses than a SWOT analysis?
Yes and no, but I think both can be done. A SWOT doesn't have to be that involved. I mean, if you're talking about your own business or what you think your business is going to be, or your own qualifications for the business, you can jot that stuff down in 10 or 15 minutes. You give it some real thought and write it down. And the hard part is not writing down my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The hard part is doing something about it. If you write down that one of your weaknesses is accounting, well, now you got to go figure out how to do QuickBooks, and you got to buy the program, and you got to learn it. And you got to, set it all up for you. It's not that hard, but it's something else you have to do. So I'm thinking coming up with the list isn't the hard part. Solving the issues on the list may take some time.
And Gary, you kind of alluded to this in your comments regarding skills or what you need to know. But as a business owner, if I'm just starting out or I've been in business for a couple of years, what would you consider the top 2 or 3 skills that I really need to learn moving forward and make my priority in the new year? For example, are you going to should I solely rely on my accountant, or should I take the initiative and learn a little bit about QuickBooks so that I can keep up with what's going on and stay up to date easier?
Yeah, yes, I think that even if you have an accountant, you need to understand, say, QuickBooks or whatever accounting system. When I had my business, QuickBooks is great, but QuickBooks wasn't there when I had my business. I used Quicken. And Quicken is nothing more than a checkbook register. In fact, it's the same. Everything you do in your checkbook register, you do in Quicken, except you add one more thing. And for the lack of the right term, I'll call it an account number. So it's who you wrote it to, what the date, how much, what the transaction was for, and then you put an account number so that when you put it in the computer, you can get the reports that you want. It's super simple, and it's way easier even than QuickBooks. But my point is yes, you should know that, because even if you have an accountant doing your books for you, you got to be able to converse with them in accounting terms so you understand what he's telling you. And the same thing goes for graphics in your web page. Even if you hire somebody to do your web page, like I said earlier, once you begin to think about a web page, you got to give the guy doesn't know your business. He doesn't know your business. He doesn't know what you do or how you do it or how you want to explain it. So you have to explain all that, and you have to provide the pictures or graphics or whatever else they're doing. And all he does is blend it all together and put it in a web page. So you should at least understand how that works. Even if you don't have time to do it, you should understand it. So when you're conversing with them and saying, this is what I want you to change, you're not asking them to change A when you really mean B, So having a full, that's why I say self-sufficiency and wearing all those hats. It's important that you are same thing with your lawyer. It's important that you guys have an understanding of the legal issues and insurance the same way.
Got you. Sorry, I was trying to move things. And you also mentioned about on most all business plans that you read, because I read a lot too. It's always social media is what we're going to use. But just to say you're going to do social media, you really have to understand it, because if you're going to make a promotion on there, if you're going to put whatever kind of content, you've got to know what you can and what you can't do, what's the best times, where's my audience at. So there's more to it. And that's one of the great things about the New Knowledge series. If you don't know those questions and you want to learn more, we've got tons and tons of workshops, webinars that we've done and we videoed, recorded over the last, almost 10 years that you have access to. Because I think we started actually recording those in 2015. So there's a ton up there. And actually the next New Knowledge session that's coming up is all going to be focused on what's the future of marketing. We know what is out there, but what's the new trends coming up? And we have Taylor Winchester. Taylor is in, I think, Nashville, and is in digital media. He's an event planner, but he's also a musician. So he's having to keep up with everything that's going on in the future. So I just wanted to share that.
The other thing, to go a little further with that, some of this stuff gets even more basic than that. And by basic, I'm like this in my, I think it's my February, I know it was my January newsletter for nonprofits or my February, I can't remember which, but they're just developing a communications calendar. No matter who does it, whether you do it or you got somebody doing your social media or your webpage, whatever it is. January, I'm going to say this. February, I'm going to say this. March, I'm going to say, happy St. Patrick's. I'm going to do a little something on St. Patrick's Day, and then in April, I'm going to do Easter. And so you scope out all the things you have an opportunity to use in your communications calendar. And the same goes for if you're a nonprofit. The same goes for your donors. What am I going to tell my donors every month? Well, you can scope that out right now, and you can scope it out for the whole year. And there's if both a business and a nonprofit go to Google and say, what does the 2023 communications calendar look like? You're going to get all kinds of this stuff coming back at you to say, here's what you got to, it's a snow in February, and it's something in March and something in April, and some of the stuff is done for you, but you can use that format. And so if you're doing social media, you have a basis on which to go, and you can even put a calendar that says every month on the 15th, I'm going to remind myself that I got to do this.
That's
pretty basic.
Anybody in marketing will tell you need to have a marketing calendar up. I mean, if you're a florist and you don't have up, and let's remind you when Mother's Day and all of those special events are, then you're missing out, because you've got to plan on that. You got to get your inventory up to snuff and start the promotion and come up with, a sale or whatever it is that you do. So yes, I totally agree. And I know
also, and also if you're the house painter or the lawn cutter, well, when do I have time to do all this stuff? That's why you have to realize that these are real jobs, and you have to devote part of your 40-hour or your 60-hour week has to be for accounting, has to be for marketing and sales and making sure you're collecting your money. Those are real jobs, and you have to, if you don't, you're going to find out that you have money everywhere and you don't know where it is.
And that's where, if you have a partnership, you need to stipulate who does what, who's on first and what's on second, so that you don't have those stumbling along the way. I know we're running low on time, and that's because, Gary, you've got so much great content that's helpful. But I want to thank you for your time and for sharing your experience and know-how with our folks. I know I do a lot of workshops, and I know it's not just you just sit down in 5 minutes and put your presentation together. It takes a lot of thought and preparation. So I thank you for that. And as I noted earlier, today's workshop is being recorded and will be uploaded on the Virginia Highlands Small Business Facebook page, and it will also be on our YouTube channel, New Knowledge, where you can go and find all of those past sessions. If you want to find a full list of workshops coming up, you could go to http://eventsvastartup.org. And I will note again that our next session will be held on January the 18th, and we'll focus on what the future of marketing will look like. And Taylor Winchester, it's a treat to have him, a professional of his caliber, to lead this session. Again, thanks, Gary. Thank you for those that joined us for your time, and look forward to seeing you again. And if you found value in this workshop today, share the content with someone else, as a small business getting started or someone struggling, and maybe they can find some tips that can help them. So thanks a lot, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.